Well, welcome back to another episode of Kimmell and Cox, your source for all things entertainment. I'm Keith Cox. I'm joined, as always, by my good friend, Dylan Kimmell.
Well, hello, everyone.
So do you remember the first time that you saw the movie? What was your experience?
I do. So, at the time, my dad was married to this one woman in Versailles. And I remember, maybe it was one morning before going to school, or maybe it was after. I just found a couple of different VHS tapes. There was The Sandlot, and then there was this one that caught my eye called Back to the Future. And I played that, and I watched it, and I loved it, right? And that was my first experience with it, because it just was I was so in awe with that movie. It was hilarious. It was intriguing. Just the idea of it. And I remember I was very young then. I was probably 10 years old.
Yeah.
And I just know that is something that I would love to do too, is just imagining how you would be able to travel in time and everything like that. And I just remember it being such an exciting experience. I knew nothing of the sequels or anything like that. It would be several years afterwards till I saw those. But that first one is, to me, the epitome of a good movie.
Yeah, really
great movie.
Oh yeah, it's just fantastic. It just really grabs you, from the beginning. For me, the first time I saw it, I remember vividly. It was Thanksgiving of 1990. So I was 9 years old. I remember it was Thanksgiving because we were at my cousin Kimberly's house, and she always would get the whole family together for Thanksgiving. Used to be my grandmother that would have everybody over, but then she got to a point where it was just harder for her to cook all that food and to have everybody in her house. And so then my cousin Kimberly took over, and you know how it is around holiday meals and everything. When you got kids running around, kids get bored very easily. They get restless, and you're it's these family gatherings. It's you kind of get, you're I got to do this again. And after dinner and everything, you're just antsy and you're looking for something to do. And so Kimberly's husband, Michael, was okay, I got an idea. And so he took me upstairs to one of the spare bedrooms. They had a TV in there and a VCR. And it's we're gonna pop in a movie, and because they knew that I loved movies. And it's well, this will keep Keith entertained for a couple hours.
It was your basically the keep you busy.
Yeah, thing. It was like a babysitter. It's let's keep him busy for a couple hours. So he's not. We'll get him out of our hair or whatever, and so he's not complaining about wanting to go home. So yeah, and so the movie that he popped into the VCR was Back to the Future. And at that time, I don't think I was. Now, I guess I was aware of the Back to the Future movies, but had never seen them because at that time I was still in full Ghostbusters mode. That was my go-to movie and everything that I was crazy about at that time. And so I guess I just had no interest in seeing it. But from the very beginning, I was interested. And then when they got to the scene at Twin Pines Mall where Doc reveals the DeLorean time machine to Marty, the moment that the car started backing out of the trailer, that was the point where I was glued to the movie, for the rest of the time.
This big giant spaceship coming out.
Well, it was just so cool.
Yeah,
it was just so cool. It was it was homemade looking, because obviously Doc Brown built this thing, in his garage, but it was also sleek and sporty looking, and I loved cars. I mean, a lot of the movies that I enjoy so much have a car that is either a central part of the story, or there is, or it's at least highly like customized, and it's like very memorable. The cars almost become a character in the movie in themselves.
Yeah. Like I can think of several different cars that you particularly really love. And like the Dukes of Hazzard one,
with the General Lee
Ghostbusters
and
one,
Ghostbusters,
obviously.
Ecto-1.
Because I remember here's a fun fact, a little off topic, but this is how particular Keith is. When we went to the Comic-Con, they had the Ecto-1 there, but something was off about it, wasn't it?
Yeah, pretty far off. It was a Cadillac, but it was the wrong year and model of Cadillac, and I think they used a hearse too, which the actual Ecto-1 was a converted ambulance, which there's a big difference between ambulance and hearse. Ambulance has windows going all the way around. A hearse has there's like a panel on the back, like where there's no side windows on that back part. Yeah, but it was like if I had to guess, it was probably maybe like a 69, 70 era Cadillac, and the one that was used in Ghostbusters was a 59 with the big, because that was the only year that had the big tail fins.
I mean, I noticed something was off, but I didn't know the detail because I don't know cars. I don't know cars all that well. But
it was still nice. It was still nice. I would call that a tribute car more than a replica, because to me, replica means you are trying to accurately replicate the vehicle. But it had the roof rack, it had the gear on it and everything, and so it was pretty well done. It was just
now I'd say that if they had a DeLorean there, I mean, there's no way someone's going to get a replica Back to the Future car DeLorean looking wrong. It's kind of hard to do.
Because there's only one. I mean, the DeLoreans were only produced from 81 to 83, and they all look the same. Like there wasn't really any variation in the style, like the body or anything like that. So you could do a replica with an 83 just as easily as you could an 81. I think the movie used all 81s because I think there were more DeLoreans manufactured in that first year than any other year. But yeah, it's pretty hard to mess that up.
It's a beautiful car, but kind of problematic too.
Yeah, they weren't the best performance-wise. They didn't have a lot of horsepower. I think top speed was like 85 miles an hour, which is really funny.
Because it goes to 88. You know what?
because in the plot of the movie, that's the thing, that it's like the car hits 88 miles per hour, and that's when it travels through time, and so the car wasn't even capable of doing 88 miles an hour. They changed the speedometer for the movie to go up to 90.
Okay, so that's the only thing they changed. But in the story, I'm going to guess that Doc Brown had done some stuff to the DeLorean there.
Yeah, probably souped it up a little bit.
Yeah.
And Marty even makes a reference when he's escaping from the Libyans. He's being chased by the Libyans in the DeLorean, and he's like, let's see if these bastards can do 90, and then he shifts and kicks into another gear. But yeah, it was just funny now. Of course, at the time, I didn't realize that. But then being a car buff, later on doing the research, I'm like, that car wouldn't even do 90 miles an hour. But it was just such a cool looking, all of the gadgets and everything that Doc Brown fitted on there. It's just another one of those iconic movie vehicles that will go down in history, will always be remembered. But that was really the thing that totally, I was already hooked, but that like really sucked me in from that point on, and then of course after that I had to see the other movies. But yeah, that was my first experience with Back to the Future, and just so many things that I love about the movie. It's besides the perfect casting, just the way that it was filmed, the cinematography, the action, the stunts, the comedy. There was such great comic timing between the actors and everything. They all just gelled so well with each other and had that chemistry. And there's very few movies that come along that have that, where you really, you felt like outside of production, these people were like family.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is that, yeah, they all were treated like family, and the best part is that it's one of those few movies where it's not just one memorable character, it's multiple.
Absolutely.
Because every character has a funny scene one way or the other. Like Biff has many, like just any other character besides Doc Brown and Marty. Like even even the mother.
Oh, Lorraine. Yeah,
Lorraine, thank you.
Leah Thompson had that girl next door quality, that sweet, very sweet quality to her, and I think that's one of the reasons why they cast her.
And Crispin Glover playing a weirdo.
Oh gosh.
So
yeah,
he's really good at that.
That's not a stretch for him at all.
Because I seem to remember them having like difficulties with Crispin as well.
Yeah, there was a lot of history with that too. Crispin, has become notorious in Hollywood for being very eccentric, and he really invests himself in the roles that he plays. I mean, he just really puts himself into it, and he had some weird ideas about.
He wouldn't be on cue sometimes.
Yeah, he had some weird ideas about the way he should portray George McFly, because in the beginning of the movie, he's a typical nerd, very nerdy character, hair slicked back, thick black frame glasses, very very soft spoken and meek in the way that that he talks and his mannerisms and everything, and he almost talks in like a whisper. It's like well, now,
yeah,
son.
It's like a whisper, and it's not only that, but he's kind of like talking through his nose. It's very nasally voice.
And then he has that. And then he has that unforgettable laugh, when something is like really hilarious, and he's like.
He has some like the weird, like, oh man, it's not until the very end that he's like much more presentable, but there's so many good lines with that. Like one, he's like, I know, son, I know, but I'm just afraid I'm not very good at confrontations.
Yeah, it just it's like Marty is trying so hard to get his dad to have a backbone, and just because his boss in the beginning of the movie, George's boss is Biff Tannen, who was his bully throughout high school, and he's still bullying him as an adult.
Yeah, the interesting thing also is that majority of the cast are all around the same age, with the exception of Christopher Lloyd. All of them are around the same age. And anyone that's supposed to be older than Michael J. Fox's character is just got aged makeup on.
Right. But that whole interaction was like Tom Wilson was perfect as Biff. He will forever be remembered for that role, because he just played it so perfectly. And he's like typical bully who thinks he knows everything, and thinks he's Mr. Cool or whatever, but he's really an idiot. I mean, he's all of his, he has all of these mixed up sayings,
mixed up phrases and everything.
It's like, why don't you make like a tree and get out of here? It's supposed to be make like a tree and leave, that's about as funny as a screen door on a submarine, or no, it's Battleship. He's like, that's about as funny as a screen door on a battleship.
It's supposed
and then
to be.
Marty corrects him, like, it's supposed to be screen door on a submarine, you dork. But yeah, it's things like that. He's just so clueless, and and it's so cool to see the way the dynamic changes, from the beginning of the movie to the end, because just to kind of break down the plot for those who haven't seen the movie, and if you haven't, why in the world not? Because it's just, when I talk to people and I say they've never seen Back to the Future, I just have that reaction like, "What? Are you serious?" But people have done the same thing with me. They've mentioned movies like. For the longest time, it was The Godfather. I hadn't seen The Godfather for it was probably just several years ago when I finally saw it.
Same thing with me. I didn't see The Godfather until maybe 2 years later, 2 years ago.
Yeah, it was probably maybe 5 or 6 years ago for me, I think.
And the same reaction for me was like, "You haven't seen that?"
Yeah.
And here's a few other movies I have not seen still. I've not seen Stanley Kubrick's Dr. Strangelove.
I actually haven't seen that.
Citizen Kane, I've not seen that.
Nope, haven't seen that either.
There's the whole list there that I can say, but yeah.
But yeah, it's just such a great movie, and I can't recommend it enough. But
I feel like it is one of the most important movies. Honestly, it's a treasure.
Oh yeah, it should definitely be preserved for all time. I think it is in the Library of Congress as one of those movies of historical significance.
I think so. I think it is.
But the basic plot of the movie is you have Marty McFly, played by Michael J. Fox, who's 17 years old. His good friend Doc Brown is a scientist and inventor who invents a time machine out of a DeLorean, and then he invites Marty out he wants Marty to be a part of the first time travel experience with the time machine, and oddly enough, Doc uses his dog as kind of a guinea pig. He puts his dog in the car, for this first experiment, and sends him like 1 minute into the future, and obviously it works. And then he explains to Marty how the time machine works and talks about the time circuits and the flux capacitor. The flux capacitor is actually the key to time travel, and Doc invented this device when actually back in the 50s he slipped in his head. He was hanging a clock above the toilet. He slipped and hit his head on the toilet, and then he had this vision of the flux capacitor.
I want to know. Now, this is kind of funny, and it's kind of like one of those funny, like, why did he do that? Who puts a clock above their toilet?
Right, really. Because if you're on the toilet, you can't see it. So I don't know, but it was just kind of funny, how all that came about, and.
But it's one of those jokes where they don't actually lean in on it. It's for the audience to be like, wait a minute.
They just leave it. What? They just leave it right where it's at. They just the audience kind of.
And I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, it is. It's like the audience can make the joke for themselves. And that's where they don't play down to the audience. They don't treat the audience as dumb. They're like, our audience is smart enough to figure out the joke behind this without us having to hit them over the head with it. But, so he invents the flux capacitor, and then it wouldn't be, of course, until years later when he puts it, in the DeLorean. And we also learn that a big component of time travel is nuclear energy, because the internal combustion engine on the DeLorean runs on gasoline, but the time circuits, the flux capacitor, those are fueled by plutonium. Which is not exactly easy to come by.
And he actually did something pretty illegal there to obtain it.
He stole the plutonium from a group of Libyan terrorists, which they end up catching up to him when they realize what's been gone. He kind of tricked them. They wanted Doc to build them a bomb, and so he basically tricked them and just built this bomb casing that was just filled with used pinball machine parts. And when they finally figured things out, they come after Doc. They shoot him, actually kill him. Mm-hmm. Marty hops in the DeLorean to escape from the Libyans, takes off, forgetting that Doc, as he's recalling how he invented the flux capacitor, he's showing Marty how the time circuits work. and he lands on a date in 1955, which was the day that he invented time travel. But Marty, as he's speeding away from the Libyans, getting faster and faster, he's not realizing that the time circuits were left on that date. Mm-hmm. And so, he hits 88 miles an hour, and the DeLorean immediately transports him into 1955, which is, the year that his parents were seniors in high school, and he runs into them, and then chaos starts to ensue because, Doc, he finds Doc in the past because he needs Doc's help to get him, back. That's where the name Back to the Future comes from. He needs Doc's help to get him back to his time, to the future.
It's one of those classic parts where they actually say the title of the movie. He's like, "We'll send you back to the future."
And then he just kind of pauses on it and is like, he's thinking about that line, like, that's really good. And then Marty interrupts him, and that was another like hilarious moment, because most movies don't like to do that, because it's so on the nose to mention the title of the movie in the movie, but it worked for that scene.
It works because almost everybody is overacting.
Right.
Not almost, everyone's overacting.
But for a movie like this, it works perfectly. And so he. Doc warns him about the consequences of potentially, messing with the past, messing with time, the space-time continuum, and it could be disastrous, and that potentially, because Marty's mother, teenage mother, basically falls in love with him, and he's like, crap,
it was supposed to be
his dad.
Yeah.
And so he's like, I've got to fix this, because if she, falls in love with me, and if they don't get married or whatever, I don't exist, So literally, Marty could erase himself from existence if he doesn't, straighten out these events. And
that there is the big plot there.
Yeah, that's the crux of the movie right there, is Marty trying to fix, trying to undo, what he's done. And of course, it all works out in the end. The big problem is that the other problem, in the movie is that Marty could end up being stuck in the past forever, because Doc explains to him, that plutonium might be more readily available in the future, but in 1955 you can't just run to your corner drugstore and find plutonium.
Which is funny because he actually stole it.
Yeah, he stole it in the first place. And so he says, the only thing that can replicate the 1.21 gigawatts of electricity needed to create that reaction, to send the time is a
bolt of lightning. Yeah, and it must be said, gigawatt. He mispronounces the word. It's gigawatt.
Yes, it is actually a gigawatt.
What the hell is a gigawatt?
Right. It was one of those oversights that they just we're just going to let that go.
Yeah, that's another moment of them just saying just keeping it to the audience to interpret that.
Yeah.
1.21 gigawatts.
Yeah. Gigawatts actually sounds funnier to me. I mean, when you think about words that sound humorous.
I imagine a lot of children, after hearing that, said gigawatt instead of gigawatt after that.
Oh yeah, I'm sure I did for a long time before I knew how it was supposed to be pronounced. But now it makes sense, because you think about computers and gigabytes. Giga is a measure it's
kind of like that one word that people keep on having arguments over. Is it GIF or GIF? It's GIF. It's GIF. I mean, it's a graphic image frame or whatever the last word is, I forget, but it's graphic image.
Yeah. So but like I said, for the movie, it was perfect, and it just so happens that we learned this in the beginning of the movie, that a bolt of lightning struck the clock tower in downtown Hill Valley on a very specific date and time and they know the time because the clock stopped when the lightning hit the clock tower, and the clock had never worked since.
And he actually Marty has the pamphlet that he was given when back in his
the flyer,
time.
yeah, save the clock tower. Yeah,
he just waves it. She just waves it in his face while he's basically just blocking him from getting a kiss.
And he finally is just like, she's going on, and and he's just like, okay, just give me the flyer, give me the damn flyer. That's like kind of what's going through his mind. But so all these devices, set up the big climax for the movie, and basically he has to time it where Doc rigs up this lightning rod, attaches it to the DeLorean, and has this cable running across the street.
His expressions during that, Christopher Lloyd's expressions when all this stuff starts going wrong.
It's so great because he has these wonderful big eyes where most people can only bug out their eyes so far, but it's almost like a cartoon where it's it's one thing after another. The cable disconnects. He has to climb out onto the clock tower and try to reconnect the cable.
And doesn't it disconnect again or somewhere?
It does. Yeah. He gets it connected on that end, up near the top, and nearly kills himself in the process because he falls and he's just hanging on by the cable. And so he finally gets it connected up there, that's what it is. It won't reach, and so he keeps yanking on it to get it into the connector. But in the process of doing that, he disconnects the other end. He gets it connected, and then he's like, and then he looks down and realizes that the end that's on the street has come disconnected, and then he just has this moment where he's like, he just lets out this scream and oh my God, because Marty is already traveling full tilt in the DeLorean towards the cable, because they have to time it perfectly where the lightning rod has to strike the cable just at the moment the lightning passes through it, so it will send him back into the future. Obviously, it all works out.
The entire ending, there's timing issues, if he doesn't get his parents to kiss, he's a goner. If he doesn't get the DeLorean to start, he's a goner.
Right. If he doesn't hit that cable at exactly the right moment, he's going to be stuck in 1955 for the rest of his life. Mm-hmm. So that's what provides the drama, that drives the movie. All of these, crazy circumstances.
And his presence in the past does end up changing the future. So there's several different hints of it too, just a little small part of it. Okay, so in the beginning, where they're at the Twin Pines Mall, and Christopher Lloyd's Emmett Brown states about how the person who owned it, Old Man Peabody, used to own all of this.
Yeah,
he had this crazy vision of breeding pine trees.
Yeah.
When Marty time travels, he actually hits one of the pine trees, and then fast forward to the very end of the movie, it's now Lone Pine Mall.
Right. There's all these little things that change in the future. So Marty, he did alter time, and because he gets his dad, George, to finally stand up to Biff,
yes,
who bullies him throughout high school. He finally he punches Biff and knocks him out. So that changes their dynamic. So when Marty goes back to his time, suddenly his dad is no longer a nerd. His dad is successful, wealthy, happy,
best-selling author.
Yes, and Biff actually works for him. There's a little reversal there. He's literally Biff is almost like his assistant or his servant, kind of. It's Biff is out there waxing his car for him and all this stuff. And
now
Biff's personality has totally changed. He's like there's this moment where George comes out there and he's like, he's like,
Don't con me.
Yeah, he's like, he's waxing his car, and he's like, now, did you put 2 coats of wax on that instead of just one? And
he kind of gets
Biff
an
is
attitude.
like, yeah, Biff is kind of he's like, I'm just putting the second coat on right now, and then George is like, now Biff, don't con me. And then suddenly, like, Biff retreats into his shell, and he's like, I'm sorry, I meant I was, I was just getting ready to put the second coat on, And he's like apologized to him, so he's become like a little puppy that's been kicked almost. So it was just cool to see how all of that changed. It's like he did change some events, but in some cases he actually changed it for the better. But a few more things definitely that, there's so much that we could talk about with this movie. I mean, we could easily turn this into like a 2-hour podcast.
Yeah, we almost, yeah.
But a few other things that definitely wanted to just mention was the music for the movie.
Yes.
And just how great the music is.
It really gets stuck in your head.
Mostly due in part to Huey Lewis and the News, which provided 2 songs for the soundtrack.
2 of them.
Yes, The Power of Love and Back in Time.
Tell me, doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And The Power of Love certainly has become such an iconic song, and that the music also really pulled me into the movie, and that was the first time that I had heard Huey Lewis, and from then on I became a huge Huey Lewis fan. They're probably one of my favorite bands of all time, and they are it's like the pinnacle of 80s pop, and the way they mixed rock with sort of that big band sort of bluesy sort of sound with the horns, the saxophones and the trumpets and all that stuff. Blending those sounds together really worked.
And another interesting point is that he actually has a cameo in the movie. Huey.
He does, yes. Marty is a musician himself, or an aspiring musician. Plays guitar, and he has these tryouts for this Battle of the Bands kind of thing at his school. And ironically enough, the song that he is playing, they're not singing, but the song that they're playing on his guitar is "The Power of Love." Of course, he's really like wailing on the guitar and everything. But one of the teachers who is judging the auditions, it's a cameo by Huey Lewis, and he's dressed like a total nerd. He's wearing like a tweed jacket and glasses, and almost unrecognizable. And he stops him. He stops him in the middle of playing. And he's like, hold it, fellas. And he's got a big bullhorn, and he's like, I'm afraid you're just too darn loud. And so that was a great little cameo in the movie. But yeah, I love the music. Not only that, but they have some great. 50s songs like Earth Angel and that they some great jokes with it. Johnny Be Good.
Oh yes,
it's like that. You can't forget about that's an iconic.
It's become a meme now too.
Yeah.
There's a scene. It's like I guess you guys aren't ready for that, but your kids are gonna love it.
Yeah, it's because Marty grew up on all of these like hair bands and everything, and he's like a rocker, and so he ends up at George and Lorraine's high school dance, the Enchantment Under the Sea dance.
I think he actually inspired one of the songs.
Yeah, the guitar player injures himself, and so Marty has to step in and play guitar. And
he injures himself because Marty gets locked in the trunk, right?
Yeah. And when they're trying to help him out, the guitar player slices his hand open with a knife.
See, now I have to say, am I right on that? Because there are like certain things that get entangled with the sequel there, and I'm like, wait, was that in that one or was that in this
right?
one?
Yeah, so, they kind of get mixed up because they go into the other movies, in the sequels,
which I think is an exciting thing. Yeah, but we'll get to that.
But we will get to that. But yeah, so the great, love that scene and the way he basically. Because Johnny Be Good, the song Johnny Be Good, while it was released in the 50s, it had not come out yet in 1955. So nobody had heard it, and so, everybody likes it, he's grooving, and playing and everything. And the lead singer of the band that's playing there is Marvin Berry, who is supposed to be, that's the joke, he's supposed to be Chuck Berry's cousin. As you know, Chuck Berry is actually the person who who wrote and performed Johnny Be Good originally. And there's this great moment where Marvin gets on the phone. He's backstage. He gets on the phone and he's like, Chuck. He's like, this is Marvin, your cousin Marvin Berry. He's like, you know that new sound you've been looking for? Well, listen to this. And he holds the phone out as Marty's like just going to town on Johnny Be Good. And he's even got the same guitar, that same red Gibson guitar that Chuck Berry used. So there's all these great references and everything in the movie that foreshadowing and these nice little jokes in there. And fun fact, I did actually get to see Huey Lewis in concert twice.
Oh, yeah.
So much fun. It was like the first half of the show was like new material, and then the second half of the show was all hits. And it's like so much fun. Everybody in the audience was singing along, and of course, I couldn't wait, for him to do the Power of Love, and he saved that towards, kind of more towards the end of the show, and
naturally, it'd be the last thing,
just
because
like
everyone loves that,
rocking out. And I don't think he even knew at the time when they wrote that. He didn't. He even joked about that in the show. He's like, when we wrote this song, at that time it was like, 30 years ago. He's like, I had no idea that we would have to play it every night, for the rest of our lives, but I think he appreciates that and how he contributed to the success of Back to the Future as well. Also, got to meet Tom Wilson, who played Biff. He was doing a show. He was doing at Comedy Off Broadway. He was doing stand-up comedy. This has been probably maybe 13, 14 years ago, something like that. And super nice guy, like as far removed from the character of Biff as you could possibly be. He's a clean comic. He's not vulgar, but he's funny. He's really funny. He did this bit when he first came out. Because he plays guitar, and so he's playing his guitar. And every time he would come up to the microphone and open his mouth like he was about to start singing, and then he would like back away, like he kept teasing the audience. And he did that like 3 or 4 times, and then all of a sudden he starts like making this this choking motion, and from like out of nowhere, I don't know where in the world he was hiding this thing, but he brings a golf ball up out of his throat and spits it out into the front row. And so it was like that was the gag, was like he had the golf ball, in his throat the whole time, and that's why he couldn't sing, because the golf ball was stuck in his throat.
That's great.
But super nice guy, was really great to meet, and he actually gave me a hug. The person that went with me to see the show, asked him, it's like, don't you think he looks a little bit like Michael J. Fox? Talking about me, and he kind of looked me up and down. He's like, yeah, maybe a little bit, everywhere except the wallet. It's like, yeah, it's pretty good resemblance there, except the wallet, meaning that Michael J. Fox is rich, and but yeah, that was a really fun experience. But yeah, it just. Back to the Future for me is just one of the best movies of all time. It has been argued by many that it's a perfect film. Mm-hmm. I don't know that it's perfect. I mean, no movie is perfect.
Yeah, there's gonna be goofs. There's gonna be hiccups somewhere along the lines.
But for
near perfect, maybe. I
was going to say, for me, it is a damn near perfect movie. So in that sense, I agree with that. And
because I'll often think about a movie like that and think, now, what could you do to improve upon it? You cannot improve.
You really can't. You really can't. I think they just, the crew, the cast, everybody. It was just. It was just perfect for its time. It really was lightning in a bottle, and you just can't repeat that. You can't there's been very few movies that have had that effect over history, and so definitely, I can't recommend the Back to the Future movies enough. Go and check them out.
Yeah.
It's available on Blu-ray, DVD.
Almost every
all of the streaming services.
I don't think it's on Netflix, but
it was. I know it was at one point. They may have taken it off by now, but
I hadn't seen it in a while. And if you're interested in finding out more behind the scenes stuff, there's documentaries. There's several documentaries actually, I think.
Oh gosh, yeah. And actually, there is a new documentary coming out about Michael J. Fox.
Yes.
It's an Apple TV exclusive coming out May 12th. It's called Still, a Michael J. Fox movie. And it's a documentary all about Michael J. Fox, his life, his struggle with Parkinson's disease.
What phenomenal human being, honestly. I mean, even throughout his Parkinson's diagnosis, he still maintained his sense of humor.
Oh, absolutely, and managed to actually use that in some of his acting roles since then, and kind of played on that a little bit, and just such a terrific guy. Would love to be able to meet him someday, and maybe I'll have that opportunity. But I'm really looking forward to seeing that documentary. Mm-hmm. Can't wait for that. So, but we are just about out of time for today.
Yeah, we kind of went a little long.
Ran a little bit long, but we knew we would.
But yeah, because this is one of our favorites.
Yes, it is. It's you really can't do it justice without really kind of diving into it.
And I have to say, this is probably like one of our top favorites, honestly. So we were going to ramble on. Anytime that it's our top favorite, we're going to probably ramble a lot.
But before we go, as always, we just want to remind everybody to subscribe, like, and share to our YouTube channel. And when you do subscribe, be sure to hit that little bell icon so that you're getting all the notifications whenever any new episodes or videos are posted. You can also check us out on our socials. We're on all the major social media platforms. And you can even reach out to us via email at kimmellandcox@gmail.com. That's our official podcast email. And those are ways that you can get in on the conversation too. So if you like this episode, let us know. Leave your comments and questions. Let us know what you'd like to see in the future. Let us know if you're enjoying the podcast, because we're always looking for ways to improve. And so we look forward to that feedback. We're good or bad. Let us know what you think. And also be sure to check out our Patreon page, which is a good way for you all to support the podcast by contributing to that. And
there's some really good stuff on there. I'd check it out.
Yeah, and some exclusive things on there too. Some exclusive clips that you cannot find anywhere else. And so that's reason enough to go on there and check it out, and hopefully take a look at some of the perks we're offering, and maybe something jumps out at you. And every little bit helps. So whatever you're able to contribute will help us out tremendously, and we'll use that for things like production costs and just being able to put forth a better quality podcast. But that's it for today. Join us next week as we go into the next film in the Back to the Future franchise, which is, of course, Back to the Future Part 2.
Yes, to be continued.
Yes. We will see you then. In the meantime, be good to yourselves, and always remember that the future hasn't been written yet, so make it a good one.
You dipstick.